Chapter 3 of A Different Cowboy by Joe Jones. She wondered if the cowboy on the roof was really different. Could she really trust him, or was his intentions far more sinister than she was experiencing? So far, he had been nothing but kind to her, but she knew that could easily change, though she prayed his kind heart was true. Johnny had ended up fixing the entire roof for the lady, and most of the siding as well. It took him a total of 9 days to complete it. During that time, Johnny and her had talked even more and got to know each other a little better. Then 3 weeks went by, with no sign of Johnny. She was working in the garden one day when she heard the hooves of a horse coming down the valley. She looked over her shoulder to see it was Johnny. At this point in time, he still didn't know her name. "Whoa, Ranger," he says as he stops his horse. She stands up and walks over to him. "Ranger? That's his name?" she asks as she gazes at the horse. "Yes, ma'am. I've had him since I was a young'un," replies Johnny. "You want to pet him? He won't bite." She hesitates. He jumps down off his horse and says, "Here, come here. You got a carrot?" "He loves carrots." She nods her head and pulls up a carrot from her garden. She stands there and grabs Ranger by the reins and starts to walk him over to her. She begins to back up. "No, it's okay," says Johnny. "Here, just hold the carrot flat in your hand like this." He shows her and hands the carrot back. She sticks her hand out, flat, and Ranger eases up to sniff the carrot. "Just hold your hand flat and keep your fingers pointed down, out of the way so he doesn't accidentally bite you." Ranger's lips start to nibble at the carrot in her hand as she closes her eyes, scared he's about to bite her. He gently picks up the carrot with his teeth and starts crunching on it. It tickles her hand and she laughs. "Wow, that's amazing. He does seem gentle. I guess I'll pet him," she says. She begins to pet him on his face and smiles. Then Johnny smiles. She looks at Johnny and says, "I think he likes me." Johnny looks into her eyes and says, "That makes 2 of us." She heard what Johnny said but didn't respond. "I've always wondered what it's like, being up there on a big horse riding through the fields when the horse is running." "I could teach you," says Johnny. "Look, have you eaten lunch yet?" he asked. "No, I was just about to get some vegetables gathered so I could go in and eat," she replies. "Okay, well, there's a little river down yonder, and I was wondering if you'd like to go with me and eat by it," asked Johnny. "I cooked some possum last night, and I'd hate to see the leftovers go to waste." "Possum?" she screams with a disgusted look on her face. "I don't want no damn possum meat." Johnny laughs out loud. "I'm joking," he says through his laughter. "Now, I may be a cowboy, but I know how to cook some great food. And in all seriousness, I cooked some buffalo this morning I killed on the plains yesterday. I don't know if you've ever tried it, but darling, it's incredible. Now, if you want to, you can go with me down to the river and bring a couple of fresh vegetables out of your beautiful garden here. I'll even let you ride Ranger on the way down there, while I walk him with a rope, so you got nothing to worry about. He ain't gonna run away or nothing." She agrees to go and gathers a few vegetables in a sack and says to Johnny, "Okay, so now what? Now put your foot here in this loop on the saddle. It's called a stirrup. And grab that thing sticking up out of the top of the saddle. That's called the horn. Use the horn to pull yourself up and throw your leg over the other side and secure your foot in the other stirrup, and just hold on to the horn as I start walking him." She successfully climbs on top of Ranger, and Johnny begins to walk him. "Wow, I never dreamed I would get to sit up on the horse like y'all white folks get to," she says. "I ain't never saw a black girl like me on a horse. I'm probably the first in this town. Maybe even the first in the South. Y'all white folks look at us like we ain't nothing." Johnny looks up at her and states, "I reckon that's the truth, and I'm sorry for that. But I'm a different cowboy. That's not me." She looks down at Johnny and says, "Well, cowboy, I don't know that just yet." They go on walking for another mile or two, talking, and finally reach the river. Johnny helps her down off a ranger and lays a blanket down next to the water. "It's beautiful here," she states. Johnny nods his head in agreement as they sit down. He pulls a knife from his side and starts to cut the bison meat and puts some on a plate and gives it to her. "Here you go." He makes his plate, and she puts some okra and tomato on his plate. They thank each other and begin to eat. "Ever eat rattlesnake?" he asks her. She looks up and replies, "Is that another one of your jokes?" He smiles and says, "No, ma'am, I'm serious. The life of a cowboy, sometimes you gotta eat what you can. Sometimes we're out on the plains for weeks, even months at a time, working on a ranch, miles away from town, sleeping under the stars, taking baths in the creek or a pond, worrying about outlaws walking up on you at night, coyotes, shooting at squirrels, rabbits, and other critters we can eat, if we're lucky, sometimes buffalo," he says as he takes a bite of the piece of meat, "and just dreaming of a better life." She's quiet for a moment, and then says, "Yeah, kinda sounds like what I've been through, except only eating when you're allowed to, doing everything you're told by someone else, or be beaten into submission. The only time you get to step into a house is when you're getting raped, just because it's convenient for the master because his wife is out of town. Having my family ripped away from me at a young age, being moved from plantation to plantation, working in the sun my whole life 7 days a week since the time I could walk, sleeping in a cabin that's filled to the top with other slaves, just dreaming of a better life." Johnny looks down with nothing to say except, "My God." She nods her head and says, "Mm-hmm." A long silence goes by, and all they hear is the rushing sound of the river beside them. "Tessa," she says. "Huh?" replies Johnny. "Tessa. It's my name." "Tessa. Well, I like that name, ma'am," Johnny says, as he takes his hat off, puts it on his chest, and nods his head to her. "Nice to finally have your name. And I'm so sorry for what has happened to you during your lifetime. How old are you, ma'am?" he says to her. "I turned 32 last month," she says. 32. Well, ma'am, you're 2 years older than me." "Yeah, I know," she says. "I know a thing or two." They spent the rest of the afternoon with each other, sitting by the river, finished their lunch, and then went their separate ways. Later that night, Johnny went back to his favorite saloon. Not long after he walked through the doors and ordered his drink, he hears a glass break from across the room. A man had broken a beer bottle on the table and was yelling to the other man, "Cheater! You cheating son of a bitch!" The men begin to fight, as one is cut with the broken beer bottle. The bar crowd backs off to give them space. The man is then stabbed with a knife and blood begins to fill the floor. Johnny rushes over to the fight. He sees that it is no longer a fair fight and realizes the other cowboy has darker intentions than just teaching the cheater a lesson, as he screams out, "I'll kill you, asshole!" By the time Johnny reaches the men, the cheater has his back on the table with a knife to his throat, fighting to not be cut again as he's bleeding on the table. "Let him go!" Johnny screams. The man doesn't stop. "I said let him go, now!" The man once again ignores Johnny's command, as the man lays on the table and screams, "I'm sorry! Take your money back! Someone help me!" So Johnny very violently grabs the man and yanks him off the other and throws him on the floor. This embarrasses the already angered man, and he quickly draws his weapon to shoot Johnny. Johnny sees this, and before the man can even fire, Johnny draws his and shoots the man twice in the chest. The crowd gasps as the man falls face first in a pool of blood mixed with beer. The injured man gets up and thanks Johnny. He reaches in his pocket and throws $2 on the dead man's body and states, "Here, take your damn money back." Just as he says this, the sheriff comes busting through the door. He races over to the crime scene. "What in the hell is going on in here?" he cries out. No one answers. He looks at the dead man and says, "Good God! I swear I'm in this saloon at least twice a week dragging y'all's trash out the door." Assuming this man was the cheater that lay dead on the floor. "Now somebody get this scumbag out of here before he starts stinking up the damn place. And don't bury him neither. Throw him out in the field. He can feed the vultures." The sheriff laughed after he had said this as he watched two cowboys drag the body out. Everyone in that town was afraid of that sheriff and did whatever he asked because of his swift and often crooked justice. "Now anyone want to tell me at least who shot this scumbag?" Everyone points to Johnny. "Johnny? Well, most of the time it's you on the other end of trouble, boy," he says. "But today I guess you decided to play hero." "That's right," says Johnny. The sheriff puts his hands on his gun belt and walks through the blood right up to Johnny and looks him in eye to eye and says, "No, boy, you got it wrong. You got it way wrong. You will never be a hero in this town. As long as I'm sheriff, I'll be the only hero in this town." Johnny looks at him with disgust and says, "Well, then it looks like I'll have to just take that badge away from you and take your title. I can run this town a lot better than you can anyway." The whole saloon looks on with shock. No one had ever talked to the sheriff that way before. "We'll see about that, boy. Give me one good reason to put you in the ground and you're gone. Maybe next time I walk in here I'll find you laying on the ground in a pool of blood," says the sheriff. "Not a chance," says Johnny. "I'm not a gambler anymore." "Oh, you're still a gambler," the sheriff exclaims. "You're just gambling with your life now, talking to me like that. I'll be watching you." He began to walk away but stopped and turned back to Johnny and said, "Oh yeah, and another thing. Your pa talked to me and said if I catch you with that black woman you've been going to see, he told me to arrest you, and I promised him I would. But now I'm afraid that's a promise I'm going to have to break, because if I see you hanging around her, I'll kill you both. You were born free. She was born a slave." Johnny gets mad and yells, "She's free now!" "Not in my book," says the sheriff as he walks away. This concludes Chapter 3 of A Different Cowboy by Joe Jones.